There are people who walk through the world as if carrying an invisible weight on their shoulders. They observe empty conversations, forced smiles, superficial relationships that everyone seems to accept as normal, and they feel a strange disconnection. They cannot participate in social theater with the same naturalness as others, not because they are superior or arrogant, but because they see things they would rather not see. They perceive the masks we all wear, including their own, and this painful perception condemns them to a loneliness that few understand. They are the people who, at a party, observe more than they participate, who notice the couple arguing in whispers while everyone laughs loudly, who perceive the host forcing joy to hide anxiety, who feel the weight of the collective performance that keeps social life functioning. Franz Kafka knew this experience intimately when he wrote that, "Man cannot live without an enduring confidence in something indestructible within himself, though both the indestructible thing and the confidence may remain permanently concealed from him." This is the curse and blessing of lucidity: seeing more than we would like, feeling more than we can process, questioning more than society allows. Kafka lived this tension daily, an insurance company employee during the day, a writer in the early hours, always divided between the need to survive socially and the urgency to express his deeper perceptions about the human condition. He knew that expanded consciousness is not a privilege. It is a heavy responsibility that few would choose if they could avoid it. Today we will explore why the most conscious people often find themselves isolated, and how this loneliness can become a portal for a more authentic connection with themselves and, paradoxically, with others. Lucidity is like waking up at a party where everyone is still sleeping but pretending to be awake. Anna discovered this at 25, when she realized she could no longer participate in work conversations about reality shows or celebrity gossip. Not because she thought herself better than her colleagues, but because she felt as if she were watching a movie in a language she didn't understand. While they debated who would be eliminated from the show, she wondered why we spend our limited mental energy on lives that will never truly touch us. This perception gradually isolated her. People began to see her as strange or too complicated. During lunch breaks, when everyone commented on the latest social media controversy, Anna remained quiet, observing not the content of the conversation, but the dynamics behind it. She perceived how people used these discussions to position themselves socially, to demonstrate they were in the know, to fill the void of having nothing truly meaningful to share. This observation didn't come from a place of judgment, but from a genuine inability to engage with what seemed fundamentally empty to her. What Anna was experiencing is what we can call inconvenient awakening. Expanded consciousness doesn't come with an instruction manual on how to continue living in a world that operates on different frequencies. It's as if you had developed super acute hearing in a constantly noisy environment. You hear nuances, subtexts, unspoken words that others completely ignore. You hear the sadness behind automatic laughter, the insecurity behind arrogance, the fear behind aggression. You perceive when someone is lying to themselves, when they're compensating for a deep wound with superficial behaviors, when they're desperately trying to fit into a model that doesn't serve them. And this capacity for perception, which should be a gift, becomes a burden when you realize that most people prefer not to know these truths. They have built their lives on necessary denials, on silent consensuses about what should be ignored for social life to continue functioning. The lucid person involuntarily questions these consensuses just by existing, just by being unable to pretend they don't see what they're seeing, and this makes them an unconscious threat to those who need to keep their illusions intact to survive emotionally. The loneliness of the lucid person is different from common loneliness. It's not just being physically alone, it's being alone in your way of seeing the world. It's like being the only awake person in a city of sleepwalkers. You see everyone moving, talking, interacting, but there's something fundamentally disconnected in their experience, and this resonates painfully within you. It's the loneliness of someone who understands a joke that no one else noticed, but the joke is tragic, not funny. It's the loneliness of someone who sees the wounds everyone carries but pretends not to have, the needs everyone feels but cannot express, the fears that dominate choices but are never named. Kafka captured this sensation perfectly when he described characters living in a world where rules don't make sense, where communication is impossible despite everyone speaking the same language, where physical proximity doesn't guarantee emotional closeness. His protagonists are always trying to reach something that seems close, but remains eternally distant, always trying to communicate, but being systematically misunderstood, always seeking belonging but finding only emotional bureaucracy. The lucid person often feels like Kay in the novel The Castle, trying to reach something that always seems distant and inaccessible. In her case, this castle might be a genuine connection, a conversation that goes beyond the surface, a relationship where she doesn't need to pretend to be less perceptive than she really is. But the more she seeks these authentic connections, the rarer they become. It's as if her very clarity of vision makes her radioactive to relationships based on mutual denials. People feel, even unconsciously, that she sees through masks, and this makes them feel exposed and uncomfortable. Modern society functions largely based on silent consensuses about what should be ignored. We ignore the mortality that hovers over every moment. We ignore the insignificance of many of our daily concerns when viewed from a cosmic perspective. We ignore the vastness of the universe and our smallness within it. We ignore the fragility of all the structures we consider solid. These collective denials allow social life to flow without friction, allow people to feel secure enough to invest energy in careers, relationships, future projects. But the lucid person cannot participate in these denials with the same ease. She sees the trembling foundations on which everything is built and cannot pretend she doesn't see. This inability to play the game socially excludes her in a subtle but persistent way from normal interactions. What makes this experience even more painful is that lucidity often comes accompanied by amplified emotional sensitivity. The person who sees more also feels more. She not only perceives the contradictions and hypocrisies around her, but feels them as personal wounds. When someone talks about love while demonstrating genuine disinterest in their partner, when someone preaches values they don't practice, when she witnesses casual cruelty disguised as normalcy, the lucid person cannot simply let it go like others do. It's as if her emotional nerve endings are exposed, reacting to stimuli that others don't even perceive. She feels others' pain even when the person themselves is denying they feel it. She perceives the loneliness behind popularity, the desperation behind success, the anger behind forced kindness, and all these perceptions echo within her as if they were her own emotions. This impossibility of ignoring what she sees creates a state of constant emotional vigilance that is absolutely exhausting. It's like having exposed skin when everyone else wears invisible armor. Every social interaction becomes an emotional minefield where she needs to navigate not only her own reactions, but also the waves of unprocessed emotions she perceives in others. And when you try to share these perceptions, when you try to talk about these observations, you're often labeled as pessimistic, complicated, or negatively intense. People prefer those who make them feel good about their choices, not those who make them question the authenticity of their lives. They prefer those who confirm their personal narratives, not those who involuntarily point to the contradictions in those narratives. The lucid person becomes a kind of inconvenient mirror that reflects truths others aren't ready to see. So she learns to stay quiet, to smile at appropriate moments, to participate in social theater even knowing it's theater. She develops a functional social persona that allows her to navigate the world without causing too much discomfort to others. But this constant effort of adaptation creates a deep internal split. There's the person she shows the world and the person she really is. And when this split becomes too large, when the effort of maintaining the mask becomes more tiring than loneliness itself, she often chooses isolation. At least alone she can be authentic, can process her perceptions without filters, can feel her emotions without having to explain or justify them to others who simply don't understand them. There is also a temporal dimension to the loneliness of the lucid that is rarely discussed, but is fundamental to understanding their experience. They often feel displaced in time, as if they were born in the wrong era, or as if they see the future before others. They perceive destructive patterns in society, decades before they become obvious to everyone. They see the emptiness behind compulsive consumerism, long before the discussion about sustainability becomes mainstream. They perceive the artificiality of social media long before studies about their effects on mental health. They anticipate economic crises by observing irrational consumption behaviors. They see the futility of many social traditions, the artificiality of much of what we consider progress, the fragility of systems others consider permanent. But when they try to talk about these perceptions, when they try to warn about consequences they see approaching, they are seen as alarmists, pessimists, or simply crazy. It's like Cassandra in Greek mythology, condemned to see the future but never be believed. This sensation of always being a few steps ahead of collective understanding creates a type of temporal isolation that is particularly cruel. The lucid person lives in a different time from the rest of the world, a time where today's consequences are already visible, where collective illusions have already dissolved, where the urgency of living authentically is palpable, because she sees how fragile and temporary all our social construction is. But this accelerated time separates her even more from others, who live in the slower rhythm of denial and distraction, who need this slowness to maintain sanity within a world that, seen clearly, can be overwhelmingly absurd and frightening. Marco, a 40-year-old architect, describes this experience as living an emotional and intellectual fast-forward. While his friends worry about promotions and buying new cars, he wonders about the legacy he will leave, whether his buildings will have any real meaning in a society that is clearly heading toward radical changes, how he can contribute to a better world before it's too late. He sees the unsustainability of current life patterns, the urgent need for reconnection with deeper values, the importance of building more authentic communities. But these concerns, although valid and deep, isolate him from casual conversations and make him seem too heavy for relationships that are based on maintaining lightness through denial of what really matters. It's a type of temporal loneliness where you're always living in the future that others can't yet see, always processing implications that others aren't yet ready to face. What many lucid people don't initially realize is that there are subtle but powerful social mechanisms that automatically exclude them from groups and relationships. It's not necessarily intentional or malicious, but it is systematic. Human society has developed sophisticated ways to identify and marginalize those who threaten the stability of collective consensuses necessary for social functioning. The lucid person, just by being who she is, questions these consensuses through her very existence. She doesn't need to say anything to disturb. Her simple presence, her way of looking, her inability to laugh at jokes that aren't funny, her difficulty in getting enthusiastic about things she considers empty, all this sends silent but clear signals that she's not playing the same game as others. And this activates primitive tribal defenses. Human groups instinctively protect their cohesion by expelling elements that might cause cognitive dissonance. The lucid person becomes a kind of ideological virus that needs to be neutralized or expelled to maintain group harmony. This happens through microaggressions, subtle exclusions, subject changes when she speaks, looks that say, "There she goes again with her complications." Clara, a 32-year-old psychologist, noticed this pattern when she began questioning some practices at the clinic where she worked. She didn't make dramatic accusations or create open conflicts. She simply began asking questions about the effectiveness of certain treatments, about the ethics of keeping patients in therapy for years without measurable progress, about the tendency to pathologize behaviors that might simply be healthy responses to unhealthy circumstances. Her questions were valid, well-founded, made with genuine concern for patient welfare. But gradually she noticed she stopped being invited to informal meetings, that her suggestions were systematically ignored, that colleagues began avoiding deep conversations with her. Not because she was hostile or critical, but because her clarity of vision made it impossible to maintain certain illusions necessary for everyone to feel good about the work they were doing. Her lucidity exposed contradictions that were easier to ignore than to resolve. But perhaps the most paradoxical aspect of lucid loneliness is that it is simultaneously a curse and a portal to a more authentic form of connection. When the person accepts her difference, when she stops trying to fit into conversations and relationships that don't nourish her, she creates space for truer connections. It's as if by stopping pretending interest in things that don't genuinely interest her, she sends a silent signal to other people who are also pretending. Authenticity has its own frequency, a specific vibration that resonates through time and space. When you stop hiding it, it resonates with other authentic frequencies around you. It's as if you stopped broadcasting on a false radio frequency and began broadcasting on your true frequency, allowing others to tune into you. The lucid person who embraces her difference often discovers she's not as alone as she thought. There are others walking through the same existential labyrinths, others questioning the same contradictions, others seeing beyond the same superficial appearances. But these encounters are only possible when she stops trying to be who she's not. The mask of normalcy, while offering a false sense of belonging, also prevents genuine connections. It takes courage to remove it, knowing this might mean more loneliness in the short term, but also the possibility of deeper and more satisfying connections in the long term. Kafka wrote that, in the struggle between you and the world, back the world. But perhaps he meant that it's useless to fight against our nature to fit into the world. Perhaps the invitation is to find our authentic place within it, even if that place is less populous and more solitary than we would like. There is a subtle but crucial difference between trying to change the world so it accepts us and finding our true place within the world as it is. The first approach leads to frustration and resentment. The second leads to peace and eventually to authentic connection. When we stop demanding that the world be different from what it is, when we accept that most people need their denials and distractions to function, when we understand that our different way of seeing doesn't make us superior, just different, we create space for a type of compassion that wasn't possible before. The lucid person who accepts her nature without becoming bitter or arrogant develops a unique form of wisdom. She learns to navigate the social world without sacrificing her authenticity, to find ways to contribute without trying to convert everyone to her perceptions, to value her rare and deep connections instead of resenting the lack of numerous and superficial connections. The transformation of lucid loneliness into wisdom happens when we understand that our difference is not a defect to be corrected, but a valuable perspective to be honored. The person who sees more, who feels more, who questions more, has an important role in the collective evolution of consciousness. She is like a canary in the mine, detecting toxic gases before they become lethal to everyone. Her uncomfortable perceptions, her inability to accept superficialities, her constant search for authenticity, all this serves as a reminder to humanity that we can live more consciously and connectedly. But for this transformation to happen, the lucid person needs first to accept and embrace her nature instead of fighting against it. She needs to understand that her sensitivity is a strength, not a weakness. Her inability to ignore injustices and inauthenticities is a moral compass, not a personality defect. Her discomfort with superficiality is a call to depth, not a sign of social inadequacy. When she makes peace with herself, when she stops blaming herself for being who she is, something interesting happens. The hopelessness of never being understood transforms into the hope of finding those who understand her. The bitterness of loneliness transforms into the sweetness of conscious solitude. And the sensation of being the only awake person in a world of sleepers transforms into the sacred responsibility of helping others awaken too, not through preaching or judgment, but through the example of an authentic life. This is where Kafkaesque wisdom reveals itself in its fullness. Kafka didn't write his stories and novels to convert anyone to a specific philosophy. He wrote because he couldn't help but write, because expressing his truth was an existential necessity. And paradoxically, this absolute authenticity, this refusal to facilitate or sweeten his perceptions to make them more palatable, is what made his works resonate so deeply with readers around the world for over a century. The lucid person who embraces her nature without trying to modify it to please others will discover that her authenticity is her greatest gift to the world. Not because everyone will understand or accept her, but because those who need her unique perspective will find her. And these connections, though rare, will be infinitely more satisfying than hundreds of relationships based on social masks. Loneliness stops being a punishment and becomes a sacred space where the person can reconnect with her essence, process her perceptions, and prepare her unique contribution to the world. She understands that she doesn't need to be understood by everyone to have value, that she doesn't need to fit into every group to belong to the greater cosmos, that her different sensitivity is exactly what some others are seeking without knowing they're seeking it. Pause here for a moment. Have you ever felt like you were screaming into the void, waiting for someone, anyone, to really understand who you are beneath all those masks you wear every day? That sensation of being surrounded by people but completely isolated inside? I know you have, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever lived this loneliness that hurts in your chest, write in the comments just, "I feel it too." You don't need to explain anything else. Just those 3 words. Because when you do that, you're telling another person who feels this way that they're not alone, and maybe, just maybe, you'll also remember that you're not either. But there's something we need to understand about this journey of accepting lucidity. It's neither linear nor easy. There are days when you feel at peace with your difference, when your sensitivity seems like a precious gift, when your ability to see beyond appearances feels like a blessing. And there are other days when you would give anything to be able to simply turn off this expanded awareness, to be able to laugh at the same jokes everyone laughs at, to worry only about simple and direct things like the football team or what to have for dinner. It's important to honor these moments of existential fatigue. Lucidity is intense work. It's like being a simultaneous translator between different realities, always processing multiple layers of meaning, always attentive to subtexts and implications that others ignore. It's exhausting, and it's natural that sometimes you want a vacation from this intensity. What you need to understand is that these moments of tiredness don't mean you're failing, or that you should give up being who you are. They mean you're human, that you have limits, that you need time to process and integrate everything you perceive. Kafka wrote in his letters about the exhaustion of carrying his particular sensitivity, about how sometimes he felt as if he were made of wood, like an immobile log on the ground. But even in these moments of apparent emotional death, he continued observing, continued feeling, continued writing, because lucidity is not something you can turn on and off. It's a way of being in the world. And once you awaken to this form of perception, there's no completely going back. You can try to numb yourself. You can try to distract yourself. You can try to pretend you don't see what you see. But deep down, the clarity remains. The question is not how to get rid of it, but how to honor it in a way that is sustainable and contributes to your well-being and the well-being of the world around you. The final irony of lucid loneliness is that it can become the most direct path to true connection. When we stop trying to fit where we don't belong, when we accept that our way of seeing the world is different and valuable, when we transform our sensitivity into wisdom instead of hiding it as a defect, we create the conditions for genuine encounters. The person who embraces her lucidity instead of fighting against it becomes a beacon for other people who are also navigating in the darkness of inauthenticity. Her courage to be different gives permission for others to be different too. Her refusal to participate in empty social games creates space for deeper interactions. Her relentless search for meaning resonates with others who also reject superficiality, and thus paradoxically, the person who accepts her difference stops being alone not because she changed to fit in, but because she remained true to herself and allowed compatible people to find her. Kafka spent much of his life feeling displaced and misunderstood, but his words today resonate with millions of people who recognize themselves in his solitary characters and in his deep existential questions. His authenticity crossed time and created connections that his conformity could never have created. Perhaps this is the final lesson, that our difference, when honored instead of hidden, becomes our greatest strength for creating true connections. Not with everyone, but with those who matter. Not on the surface, but in the depths where the soul really dwells. The lucid person learns that loneliness and isolation are completely different things. Isolation is being forced to be alone against your will. Loneliness is choosing to be alone to reconnect with your inner truth. Isolation is a prison, solitude is a sanctuary. And when she understands this difference, when she stops seeing herself as a victim of her sensitivity and begins to see herself as guardian of a rare and valuable perspective, her entire experience changes. She's no longer running from people. She's preparing for more authentic encounters. She's no longer hiding from the world. She's reconnecting with her essence to be able to contribute more meaningfully. Loneliness becomes a laboratory where she develops her wisdom, a studio where she refines her art of living consciously, a temple where she cultivates the compassion that comes from deeply understanding both the pain and beauty of human existence. And when she emerges from these periods of solitude, she brings with her something the world desperately needs, the reminder that it's possible to live with greater depth, that it's possible to see beyond appearances, that it's possible to maintain sensitivity in a society that often punishes it. She becomes a living example that difference is not defect, that sensitivity is not weakness, that questioning is not being problematic. And this by itself is already an immeasurably valuable contribution to the evolution of collective consciousness. What happens when a lucid person finally embraces her nature is that she discovers creative and surprising ways to contribute to the world without sacrificing herself. Roberto, a 45-year-old accountant who always felt displaced in the corporate environment, discovered that his ability to see patterns and inconsistencies that others ignored made him exceptionally good at detecting financial irregularities. Instead of trying to suppress his tendency to question and analyze deeply, he channeled it to specialize in forensic auditing. His inconvenience of not being able to ignore details that didn't make sense became his greatest professional strength. More importantly, he began using his free time to teach financial education in underserved communities, translating his perception about economic systems into practical knowledge that can help ordinary people make better financial decisions. His lucidity about the contradictions of the capitalist system didn't make him bitter or passive, but propelled him to find constructive ways to make a difference within the limitations of current reality. This is what happens when we stop fighting against our nature and begin working with it. We find creative ways to channel our different sensitivity into concrete and valuable contributions. The lucid person who accepts her nature often discovers she has much to offer, precisely because she sees what others don't see, because she feels what others don't feel, because she questions what others accept without thinking. Her different perspective is not an obstacle to overcome. It's a resource to be used with wisdom and compassion. And when she understands this, when she finds ways to honor her lucidity while contributing constructively to the world, she will discover that the loneliness that once seemed like punishment has transformed into a source of strength and clarity that sustains her in all her activities and relationships. If you made it this far, it's because you feel there's something deeper waiting for you. You're not alone in this search. This channel exists for those who, like Kafka, understand that life's most important questions don't have easy answers, but deserve to be explored with courage and honesty. Every week, we create a safe space where you can pause, breathe, and rediscover your own inner wisdom. Subscribe not just to receive notifications, but to become part of a community that believes your journey of self-discovery is sacred. Together, we'll transform existential loneliness into a path of profound self-knowledge, because you deserve to find your truth, even if it's different from everything you've heard before. And if this video touched something in you, if you recognized your own experience in these words, share it with someone who might also be feeling displaced in this world. Sometimes the person who most needs to hear these reflections is closer to us than we imagine. Your lucidity is not a burden, it's a gift. And the world needs people like you, who see beyond appearances and have the courage to live authentically, even when it means walking down less populated roads.